What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Preacher's Kid podcast. How's life in Wilmington, North Carolina, co-host? What's happening, Eli?
What's up? It's hot and sunny. It is nothing better than spring in the South.
Nothing better than the spring and the beach and all of those things. And
Absolutely.
I'm not sure that anybody appreciates the beach any more than our guest who's on today. An incredible PK with an incredible story. And we're probably going to talk about some Navy SEAL training later today. So we'll get back to that beach topic. But we're excited to welcome Ben Courson to the podcast. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm living the dream, guys. Thank you for having me. It's been a little bit of a chaotic day, but I love living a chaotic life. It's way more fun. So I'm glad to be
here.
Agreed.
Dude, I'm just so excited. And what you guys are doing is such great work in the world. Like I was thinking, I think like several months back out loud with a friend of mine that most of my best friends are pastors' kids. Like they just are, because we tend to be really crazy. Either you go like atheist, like new atheist route, or you keep loving God. You just kind of got to do it in a slightly anti-establishment way. And that's kind of how we are. We're all wild and crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah, we definitely get some just interesting perspectives from just people all across the spectrum. And so that's why we do this. We just want to be able to equip pastors' kids, some who are, doing the right thing and some who have no clue what they're wanting to do and everything in between. And so that's where we're just stoked to have people like you on here. But hey, Ben, I want to hear a little bit of your pastor's kid, maybe testimony life. Kind of give us like a bird's eye view of what your life was like growing up as a pastor's kid.
Well, my dad, he just lived what he preached, and he lives currently what he preaches. I would sometimes drive down the road and I would see him walking with his Bible, just talking to God. Like he would go on these Bible walks. He still does. Like he'll sometimes, like Paul on his missionary journeys, would walk upwards of 20 miles a day. My dad will do that. Like he's a pastor who will just like go walk 20 miles memorizing scripture. He's just gnarly, So I would see him like on his knees and very intense in the living room praying. And I'll tell you, my dad doesn't just have orthodoxy, he has orthopraxy. My mom is the most joyful person I've ever met. Like if I had to be one person when I grow up, if I ever choose to, it'll be my mom. She reads Philippians every morning. You can, read it in less than 15 minutes. You can either change your car insurance with Geico in 15 minutes or less, or change your joy. And my mom just has an amazing way of just every day getting the mindset reset. 11 times Philippians talks about the phrase mindset, 19 times joy, the noun, verb, cognate, rejoice. She really lives that out. So I would just say my parents, with my dad's scriptural knowledge that he drilled into me as a kid and my mom's joy, I just am very, very fortunate, and God's been very good to me to let me have that experience.
I've got a book just strategically placed back here on my shelf called Flirting with Darkness. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I heard it's a great book, dude. I heard it's a must read.
It's a thriller. It's a must read. It's a game changer. And so I wanted to encourage everybody to swipe up on the show notes and check out that book for sure. Get a copy, order it on Amazon or wherever else. But Flirting with Darkness, the concept of darkness, has so many different meanings, and more than just the one that you approached incredibly so in your book. Your family has been no stranger to darkness in the life, in ministry. And one of the things that I really respected and was just amazed at with your dad is how he handled those types of things and how your family handled those types of things. I remember one particular situation where you had experienced some loss in your family, and your dad was teaching the following Wednesday night. And I can't imagine how much wherewithal and wisdom and Holy Spirit peace and all of that took. And so I'm curious, a lot of PKs go through different types of tragedy.
Right.
Their family does. How did you all handle that? How do you continue to approach tragedy and still have such joy?
Well, there's kind of a hairball here, and I'm really glad. I don't know if I've talked about this in an interview I wrote about in Flirting with Darkness, but I just need to say, like, how my dad has handled tragedy takes a tremendous amount of Herculean Holy Spirit strength. Like he just will go through these tragedies. And as you know, like my sister died and my brother died, and we have this stalker who follows us around trying to destroy our ministry. He's been doing it since I was a kid. To like, he literally caused a car accident at an event I was doing in Florida digitally a few months ago because he was protesting so loud. So it's like, you just go through stuff. I got diagnosed with PTSD, the complex version. And I just think like it can get pretty gnarly. And what happened is, my counselor said I have the most difficult case of depression she's ever had to treat. And I think this can happen in pastors' kids because we're in a different generation, and answers that simply worked for our fathers may not always be the exact same morphology, rhetoric, or syntax that's going to suit our personal subjective fancy to get us through what we're going through. And so all of that to say, like, that's the mindset that I took. I went through this romantic heartbreak after an 8-year relationship that left me absolutely blindsided, that to be honest with you, like I didn't think I'd ever be happy again. And I just remember preaching through it when my brother passed away, preaching through it when my sister passed away. Like, I remember I gave my first sermon in 3rd grade, but our family just pushed through. And I love that. And that's something I want to say I'm very proud of. At the same time, okay, so there's an underbelly here. With that can come a lot of stuff that you haven't dealt with, you know, like there's a lot of subconscious stuff. And again, the subconscious is a Freudian idea. I'm not talking about the medulla automatic responses of your physiological constitution. I'm talking about like the psychiatric theory of the unconscious self. This Jean-Paul Sartre and the existentialists didn't even believe it existed. So I don't want to use all these psychobabble terms, but there is something to be said of shoving things down. For me, I just am speaking for my own life, that I needed to go back and deal with those things that I'd been through, because it was just culminating in this profound sense of, I would have panic attacks because nothing's secure. Everybody's dying, you know, it feels like, and it's just like, you just go through this really, really dark time. And I guess like, the way I can explain it, how I got healed is, remember when Jesus cast out Legion? He said, "What's your name?" And the demon said Legion, and he could cast it out. But remember when his disciples couldn't cast the demon out after the Mount of Transfiguration? It's because a rabbi pointed this out to me. It's because it was a deaf and dumb spirit. It couldn't speak. And so I think if the demon can't speak, it gets shoved down and it stays there. But when the demon's named, you can cast it out. And I think as a metaphor, I'm not saying like I had to be exorcised of some demon, because that's obviously not what happened. But I mean, like, you know, you battle your own inner demons. You're in a spiritual warfare. I believe you kind of have to name what's going on in order to understand it and cast it out. Similar, I know I'm being long-winded, but last thought on this idea, like similarly, there's certain Polynesian tribes that do not have a word for grief. So when someone they love dies, they say they experience fatigue. Or the Greeks couldn't see blue, is what now those who study these things believe the Greeks couldn't even see blue because they didn't have a word for blue. They called the sea, like Homer called it, the wide dark sea. So all that to say, psychologists say that we can only be conscious of that for which we have labels. And I didn't have labels for some of the things I was going through, and therefore I didn't know how to deal with them. So it was going to extensive counseling that was one of the things that really helped me through. So does that make sense? I told you it's a hairball.
Absolutely. No, that makes tons of sense. And I love how you were able to tie in science and Christianity. And sometimes we as in Christians like to compartmentalize everything.
Right.
And we don't see that there's a flow between some of that. And so thank you for just so beautifully articulating that, because I think it's important for, one, to be educated in it, and two, to be able to understand what to do with what we have and to make the most of that. And so just like you were saying, and so thank you for dropping that knowledge bomb on us all today.
Well, I'll tell you what, dude, like you brought up a great point about compartmentalization versus integration, and Christians invented the scientific method. So a lot of people don't know that, but Roger Bacon and William of Occam's razor, they invented the Christian method. They were Franciscan monks and friars 750 years ago. Christians invented science. So I'm always like, why are we at war with science? You know, we're the ones who invented it.
I love that, dude. And I'm just learning this is worth its weight in gold right here, just for me personally. This is more than I learned in school.
Let's
So
go,
this
dude.
is, of course, your dad is a giant in the faith and just someone who many of us have looked up to. For you, because for me, I'm working with my dad at his church right now. Maybe tell us a little bit of, yeah, so maybe tell a little bit about that, your experience and kind of some of that influence and how it's rubbed off on you, but how you're also navigating your own path and your own journey through it as well.
Well, my dad is amazing. And one of the things that he said is I remember I was 18, 19 years old and I tried to teach like him on a stool. Like he'll sit on a stool and teach through the Bible. And I tried to sit on a stool when I was teaching. And he said, Ben, stop using the stool. And I loved that. Like it was a powerful proverbial figurative way of saying like, don't project an avatar to the world that isn't who you are. No cognitive dissonance here. Like be who you are. And I'm very hyperactive, like I love reading. I love, throwing my fist in excitement when I preach. I sometimes will jump. I just get excited. And I love that he sort of instilled that in me. Another thing that my dad instilled in me that I just so deeply appreciate and honor is the Bible. I mean, we're learning these obscure passages in scripture, when I'm a little kid. It's like people are like, what school did you go to? I'm like, I went to the John Courson Household University.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I just grew up listening to my dad teach the Bible. And I'm so thankful that he didn't settle with giving me, just Romans 8:28 or John 3:16, but it's like, let's go through Judges. He's teaching me. We remember in high school, we would sit down and he would teach me through, might have been middle school, I can't remember, but he'd like teach me the book of Revelation. And it's just really, really profound stuff. My dad, I can't express how deeply grateful I am that my dad instilled in me both the scriptural knowledge to run with what I have and also the opportunity he gave me. I wouldn't have preached my first sermon in third grade or started traveling and speaking at 16 or been a pastor my senior year of high school if it wasn't for my dad. Like just for that alone, I'm just like, not to mention all the other stuff, I'm just eternally standing in his debt.
I love that you called that out because as PKs, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants in our own
You're
city.
right.
We've been given launching pads and diving boards that the average person doesn't get. So that comes with its advantages. And then it comes with some, I don't want to call it a disadvantage, but some challenges. Yeah. And one of the challenges that I'm curious about, because we have young PKs and older PKs listening right now, and you assumed the leadership position of a church that had always been led, as far as we know, with great vision and great leadership.
Yes.
And when we look at like Joshua chapter 1, Joshua is following up a significant leader, the most famous world leader ever, Moses. And yet God tells Joshua, you're going to lead this nation to places it's never been before. So how do you transition, from one great leader to the next generation? And how do you lead a church that's been led so well into places that it's never been before?
Oh gosh, great query. You guys are good interlocutors, man. I'll tell you what, I'm a year in, almost a year in, and I am figuring it out. So I don't have any advice to give people, but I will say this. Understand that if you're going to take the position of your father pastoring the church that he pastored, that church has DNA in it. So one of the things I tried to do initially is change a bunch of stuff. And I realized we kind of reneged on some of those changes, keeping the overall vision. But you have to realize, Paul said, I will not build on another man's foundation, meaning like if you're trying to totally change what your father did, I think that can be tricky. And the move might be, if you feel a peace about it, to go start your own new thing. And for me, that's what Hope Generation is. It's linked to Applegate. It's an outreach of Applegate, but Hope Generation, that's our media ministry. That's like where it's like all just my flavor in it. You know what I mean? Like what I love, as far as even aesthetics or creativity or vision. And Applegate, what I've actually made a lot of peace with and is really good for me, is a place that has 40 some years of established history. And I want to walk in that and build up a new generation in that, with some, obviously some different fingerprints, with some, there's going to be my own subjective creativity that I'm projecting into that. But that being said, like, I've just learned, that you want to keep the DNA of the church. Does that make sense? I hope I'm making some sort of cohesive, coherent sense with this. I haven't really unpacked this. It's more stuff in my head. But I'll just say, like, I think that my passion is so different than my dad as far as what our ministry calling is supposed to be. So ever since I was a teenager, my dad knows this, like, I've been called to television. That's something that I've always been passionate about. So I'm constantly, like yesterday, I was doing a TV show. I'm constantly doing that kind of stuff. And so my dad has had much more of like a pastoral mindset. And to be totally honest with you, and people know this, like I was always saying, you can go back to interviews even a couple of years ago. And I'm like, yeah, I'll never be a senior pastor. No, I'll never do it. I'll never be a senior pastor. I kept saying that. I'm like, no, never. And I had to get like talked into it. Like, I mean, a full on they ganged up on me and talked me into it in a good way. And I'm actually very thankful that they did, because it's caused me to mature. It's grounded me in new ways. I feel like if you're just out traveling on your own, what happens is you can get a little psychologically unmoored and a little weird. So it's good when you have a grounding of local people that see you and are not impressed with you. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of need those people who are like, I'm not impressed with you. I've heard you a million times, you know? I think that stuff is actually very grounding and good. So yes, having the Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, uttermost ends of the earth, but always go back to Jerusalem and go back to your base. That's kind of how I look at it. Does that make sense? And I love the people at Applegate.
Oh, we both want to ask you about some of those crazy passions, and that's how we'll close our conversation. But you brought up something so significant. In all your crazy passions, from skateboarding to Navy SEAL training to all of these really cool things, we weren't sure if we were going to get on the Zoom call today and get to see the six-pack for the Savior. Out there,
six-pack for the Savior. I have never heard that, dude. That's so good.
Abs for Jesus.
Oh my God.
Pecs and Promises, all of them. But you're so in touch with the next generation, and yet you're extraordinarily passionate about things like television and radio. I didn't even realize all the things that you were doing. And there are some people that have forsaken those completely because they say, oh, those are outdated. That's not next. That's not next. Why television and radio?
Well, Jesus said the wise teacher pulls from treasures new and old. So I think the great thing about the internet is you can get your voice out to anybody, but it's hard to get credibility there. It's hard to have gravitas. And if you read 2 Corinthians, the whole book almost is Paul saying, listen to me, I have authority. You know, like you to get a message out, you need that authority. What radio and TV do is they give that credibility and that level of authority. And also there's just a huge reach. Like when I was on Good Morning America last week, that was the best thing that I'd ever done for my book out of all the podcasts or anything else, you know? So that being said, you have to go past gatekeepers to get on radio and TV. Anybody can post a YouTube video but to have those sort of platforms gives you a level of credence that then when you jump over to YouTube and you're posting stuff that's from TV there, I'm the only one who has this mindset, by the way. So it's like, I don't want to say this is how anyone else should do it. They can if they want. This is just how I'm wired. Then when we take our TV and radio stuff and we put it on our podcast, when we put it on YouTube, when we post about it on social media, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and stuff, I just believe, like, why not use it all? Like, why would I limit myself to one avenue when I can use all these different avenues to reach young and old alike? Because I don't know, like, why, just because, first of all, when it comes to like skating, somebody said, oh yeah, you skate because you're trying to reach the young people. And I'm like, no, I skate because I like to skate. I think people can feel like if they're a target, you know, like, oh, I'm a target, I'm a mark. Like, you have an agenda in this, but I just skate because I like to skate. So there's that element that's just how I am. Like, I do SEAL training because I love to do SEAL training. But at the same time, I don't know why we think like, oh, we only have to reach one generation. Why not reach both? I want to reach the old generation too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, obviously I have a relatability the most with my age group, but like, why not reach both generations? Jesus said the wise teacher pulls from treasures new and old. The new covenant, the Acts, Joel respectively say that young men will see visions, but what else? Old men will dream dreams. So why not vision a dream cast into both generations?
That's gold.
That was a truth bomb, Eli. That was a mic drop moment right there.
That sure was. All right, sounds good. That was worth it completely right there. But I love that you're touching on some other things, like John said, some of your hobbies. We probably have very similar hobbies when it comes to like training and fitness and working out.
Let's go, dude.
Like,
well, let's get after it. If you're on the West Coast, let's get after it.
Yeah, I need to, like, seriously. But for me, I think for me, I personally do it as a way of like therapy almost too. It's the one time of the day where I can take 60 to 90 minutes and just kind of recharge after, church is all people. And it's the one time of day where I can more or less kind of be selfish with my time and working out and doing that. But especially when it comes to like hobbies and skateboarding and surfing and all the other stuff, how does that kind of fit into your life? How do you prioritize that? Is it just natural, just comes about the day? Maybe just kind of touch on
good.
Those.
I love this podcast. I hope we get to do a second parter. And you guys are so gracious with being patient with me with scheduling stuff, but like we should do a second parter to this at some point if you guys want, because there's so much here.
Let's do it.
But here's the thing, because this is a fun conversation. And that's the thing. I feel like the best shows are you forget you're getting recorded. Those are the ones that I like listening to the most, where they're just like really locked in, you're really locked in. What was your question though? Because it was a really good one. I was so amazed by the question. I got off on how good this podcast is.
Just how you
prioritizing. I remember.
Prioritize it all.
Yeah. Okay. So this is there's so much here, but I'll try to synthesize it. I used to think that if people saw me skating, they'd be like, well, why didn't you meet me for coffee? Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought there would be total judgy vibes. Like, you're skating, but you don't, because we're very busy people. And I know that that's kind of pseudo, like, it's a euphemism for saying I'm successful. And I don't mean it that way. I just mean there's a lot on our plates. And so I thought, like, man, if I skate and I post about this, people are going to think like you're irresponsible and you should be meeting me for coffee or then counsel me or something. And I'm terrible at counseling. I'm horrible at counseling. And I don't see any fruit from going to coffee, nor do I see Peter, James, and John going to coffee with people. I always say to people, I'll be your friend.
Yes.
I'd love to be your friend. Like, come up and talk to me. Like, I'd love to be your friend. But as far as counseling, like, I think today the pastor's expected to be a CEO, a vision caster, an entrepreneur, a teacher, like all these millions of things. And I just like to go back to the fact that, and this is how we're trying to do Applegate, it was run as a team. Obviously there was a personality like, Peter, James, John, and then Paul and Barnabas and Silas at Antioch and Jerusalem, the churches respectively. But at the end of the day, it was apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, evangelists. They ran it as a team. So what happened is when I started skating and doing SEAL training and doing this other stuff, so far from people judging me from it, they actually got inspired by it. And they said, it's cool. You talk about hope, but you actually go do it. You actually go have fun. And it was really freeing, and I think sometimes people can get leery of, or even afraid of, going out and having fun, because people will think like, man, you're shirking your responsibilities. But I've actually had a pretty opposite experience. Like, people have actually been inspired by that, and it's helped me to reach more people. Isn't that weird? So that's
absolutely.
So I think prioritizing some of these fun things, I always fuse in work and fun. So when I'm with my friends, I get B-roll with because iPhone Pro 12 now, like, dude, the technology is so good that like you can get, if you have a good editor, and we have a great editors and videographers, they can put it through their software and their editing techniques and make it look really good even for TV. So all that to say, like, we're always documenting and then I'll voice over a message to skating or to SEAL training or to hanging out with my friends and sending it and getting after it. And then we make it a message to inspire other people to go out and get after it themselves, which is what Paul said, fulfill my joy by being like-minded. What makes me joyful is not only serving others, but what makes me joyful is seeing you, as I serve you, go serve other people. And that's what this sort of mindset does. It has a symbiotic domino effect. So That's how I prioritize it. Work and play go hand in hand.
And I think, because for me, the posts that I kind of stop on are the ones where you're doing those kind of trainings and doing those things, but you're also talking over it, and you're talking about, maybe it's Paul, or you're, doing something hard. And for me, like that stimulates me probably more so than just, someone just sitting there chilling with their phone up, which is what I did yesterday. So I'm kind of bashing myself here, but
so it stimulates Eli, and it causes me to stumble because I'm jealous, and I'm like, why can't I do that? It's complete covetousness on this
Hey,
end.
actually, you know what's funny? I was just talking about this on TBN yesterday. This is something I've wanted to, I'm glad you brought that up as a funny joke, but there's something to this. This is what I love about SEALs. If I was out there and I was 6'8" and LeBron James and making videos about being LeBron James, you'd say like, bro, I can't do that. No matter how hard I try, I cannot be 6'8", and I can't play like LeBron James. This is why SEALs are so inspiring, because two of my really good friends are SEALs. And one is a retired SEAL, one's an active SEAL. And the thing about them is, and this is something you'll hear all the time or study when you look at SEAL training, the guys you think won't make it are the guys who do. It's the overweight video game players that often make it. And the best athletes who are first in everything, they quit during Hell Week a lot of times. It's like a pattern. And the reason why I love SEAL training is because it's all about the mind. Yeah, sure, you have to have a little physical, some sort of prowess or ability, but you don't really need a lot of athleticism. You just need to be mentally hard. So it's all about training your mind. And that's why I like it, because really anybody can take the precepts of Navy SEALs, like eat the elephant one bite at a time, forged by adversity, the only easy day was yesterday, and implement it into our everyday lives, whatever we're doing.
That's so good. Well, I hope we get to have a part 2 of this conversation as well. But Ben, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Do you have a PK one-liner you want to give to our friends that are listening? What's that one word of hope for every preacher's kid?
The one word of hope is God, when he made you, he didn't make a mistake. He made a miracle. My dad used to tell me and my brother, you're not preaching because you're coursing. You're coursing because God made you to be a preacher. And you're not a pastor's kid by accident. You're there by appointment. So respect your legacy, but then go do you. I think people think you have to do one or the other. Like, am I going to respect my parents' legacy, my dad's legacy, or am I going to like do my own thing? The answer is yes, you can do both. And the older I get, the more I'm seeing these are in symbiosis. They're not antithetical. These are complementary, not contradictory. So I just want to encourage every pastor's kid to learn from your father, but then also see where you can take it like Joshua into the promised land. As Isaac Newton said, if I've seen further than others, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. So let's be thankful for our legacy, and let's see what new vision we can have standing on our father's shoulders.